Alright, and we are finally live. Sorry for some of the technical difficulties that happened earlier, but this is the A Court of Thorns and Roses live show for the Random Read-Alongs group. This is the book we read during July, but we had a little bit of a slight delay, and now we're talking about it in August. So everyone can join us today, which is awesome. So Sarah Jane and Kristen are both here, and we are just going to discuss everything. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Kristen from Cat 9X.
And I'm Sarah Jane from the Book Life.
And before we get started, I just want to warn people that this is not a gushing live show. If any of you guys have been following the Twitter updates or the hashtag or anything, or Goodreads, the Goodreads group, we were not the biggest fans of the book. So if you are welcome to discussion, if this is your favorite book and you're welcome to discussion, then please stick around. But if you are not welcome to discussion and you don't want to hear anything bad about your favorite book, then I would recommend not watching this. But everything we're saying is going to be nice in a constructive manner. We're not going to tear apart everything and be super mean. But if you can't handle that, then I would recommend not.
And we would still like to hear from people who did like the book, because that's always interesting. But yeah,
absolutely.
You know, don't hate on us because we didn't enjoy it that much.
Right. Right. So I think first off, for me, and as far as the live show and everything, and the book, I heard so much hype about this book. I mean, we all did before it came out, and I'm not sure if that had anything to do with how we went in expectation-wise, but the hype surrounding this book months before it came out was insane. So I'm not sure if we all went in with really high expectations at that point, and that's part of the reason. But there are a lot of things that we feel this book didn't execute as well as we would have liked. So we are going to talk about those today. And again, if you guys are a fan of this book, please do let us know and talk about it, and we can discuss. Like if you disagree with us, that's fine, as long as we're not being mean.
And don't forget to ask questions in the Q&A on the sidebar. Click that open so that we can answer your questions, because that's what we're here for, to discuss with you guys as well. So make sure you ask questions.
We like questions.
Yeah, and you can tweet us too. If the Q&A is not working and you're anyone to tweet us questions, then feel free to do that as well. Any of us will get those. So as far as the first thing, since with this being a Beauty and the Beast retelling, that was one of the big appeals for me, was as soon as I heard Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I hadn't even finished, I don't think any of us had finished the Throne of Glass series, what's out so far, but when we heard about this book.
No, because we heard about this in January.
Yeah. So when I heard Beauty and the Beast, I was like, I'm reading this regardless. So how do we feel like the Beauty and the Beast retelling elements went with this book?
I think, for me, that was probably one of my biggest issues, because I don't know about you, but some fairy tales naturally feel like they're a bit of an adult story. You always think this fairy tale, obviously most original fairy tales aren't actually suitable for children, but let's just brush that aside. It always seemed like it was a story that was waiting to be told in an adult fantasy way. So when you saw the blurb and when you saw what it was going to be, it seemed like it was the perfect formula for a book. So I was expecting it to be a lot more, not adult as in content, but I just felt oh yeah, he's a shifter and it's this. It just seemed like the perfect setup, and I just felt on the retelling side, it just didn't really deliver.
I felt the same way. For me, retellings are taking the elements that are already there and embellishing them and giving them more reason as to why all these elements are there. Belle in Beauty and the Beast likes books, and there's a reason she likes books. She likes to read. That's what she does. And for me, that was my one thing. I was I don't get it. Why does she not like books? I understand the whole backstory because she didn't learn to read and everything, and they changed it to painting. But little things like that just made it. For me, a retelling is more so take what you know and evolve it, rather than take what you know and just mush it and change it, and then this is what you have. Because for me, that retelling just missed the mark. It was more you had a beastly person and a nice girl, and that was it. And she gets captured. There's nothing else after that.
Yeah, I definitely thought that the retelling elements were a little weak. The things that she did well, I really liked, but that was so few and far between that I felt one of my biggest thing with Beauty and the Beast, especially the movie, the Disney film that we all grew up on, is that you love all of the side characters, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, Lumiere.
Right. And I was waiting for getting reimagined versions of those characters, and I'm not sure if she took this from the original. What what Beauty and the Beast is she retelling? Like, is it like the
Yes,
original
that's
German?
a very good point, actually.
Yeah, like, because not all of us are familiar with every single one. I'm not sure which one she was going from. But
True.
at the same time, if you know that you have a beloved fairy tale that people have watched the Disney version of, like, at least pull in a little bit of Disney. You know, like, we all are kind of being like, why? Why?
Yeah.
I think the
I
biggest
think
for me was I thought we were going to get a big cast of really likable characters, and we got Lucian, who I adore. But, like, other than that, it's like, who else is here? What? Like, that kind of fell flat for me in the retelling side.
yeah.
I also felt like it rested on some of the things that the book just assumed that people would love. Like, oh, okay, we have this generic shifter bad guy. I'm doing this because he wasn't bad. You know, and it was like, it was almost like the tropes associated with that character were met, therefore the character development stopped.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it was almost like by fitting him into that box, he then became very, very bland, actually.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really have, and I just felt like it almost, some of the things were changed, like you said, Kristen, about like the books and stuff. I didn't really see the point in turning that to art. I didn't really feel like that was a worthwhile change.
Yeah.
And then with other things like, you know, the beastly character, it was almost like it was like it ticked the box enough to be a retelling, but did it really enhance what was there originally? Because obviously fairy tales are so short. So to make anything from a fairy tale into a full-length novel, you add so much more. So we didn't need to have we just needed it to be like built on. I just didn't really feel like it did that.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with me and Tamlin is that I felt like you were saying, that they only ticked a few boxes, and that was him as a beast. But for me, the beast I enjoy because when Belle first gets to the castle, the beast really doesn't want her there. He's given up on the curse. He's done. He, is mean and everything else. Like, he's not mean or pretending to be mean like Tamlin was. Like, he's legitly mean.
Yeah.
And Tamlin's like the good guy the whole time and doing all these things for good reason. I'm just like, that's not a beast. That's not a beast. And it wasn't even like the physical manifestation where I was like, you're not a beast, even though that was annoying a little bit too, even though I could kind of forgive that a little bit. But he just wasn't acting beastly. Like, there wasn't a lot of him being like, I mean, the Beast, even in the movie, even in the Disney movie, the Beast is like a huge jerk for the first, 20 minutes that she's there,
Yes.
So for a long time. So, and him gradually turning into, like, a nicer person and, opening up because of her is one of the big things with their, relationship that makes their relationship so lovable and that people really enjoy about it. So not having that slow transition and just all of a sudden it being like, he bit me once, and I love him. Like, it's just, like, what?
I feel the same way.
Hate turned to love. It didn't have hate turned to love. It was just okay turned to love.
Yeah, because for me, you don't like Tamlin, and he has I had an inkling he has a hidden agenda. Like, what is it? And even though it gets revealed, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I still don't like that he's just this nice, boring character from the beginning. Like, that's all he is. He's like, oh, I'll take this girl back to my castle, and then she just hangs out, and he's like, oh, you need food and you need clothing, like, hi, like, I'm just gonna be really nice. Like, aren't you pissed? Like, she killed your friend and da-da-da-da, and you find out later all this stuff, but, like, I don't know, it just seemed so boring. It was just them going back and forth, having, like, nice little pity talk back and forth over dinner every day. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. Actually, we did get a question regarding this, and this is, what did you think of the story, regardless if you took the Beauty and the Beast part out of it? Like, if you didn't even know it was retelling, what would you think of the story?
That's a very good question.
I still thought it was weak.
Yeah,
I really did.
I think the character development is very, very weak, and I've said this when we, vaguely talked about this book, is that it felt like a book that the publishing company maybe wanted, and Sarah J. Maas didn't want to write, or Sarah J. Maas wanted to write it, but they didn't feel like it was going to sell properly, because it felt like very tug and pull. Like, there'd be a moment of glory, and then there's, this 3 chapters of, bleh. And then there was a moment of, really good writing again, and then we're back to, blah, blah, blah. Like, it just felt a very, very tug and pull type of book. It didn't feel cohesive to the writing style and the growth that Sarah J. Maas has had over the past 4 books that she's put out. So that's what I felt. Like, the first 2 chapters felt really good. They were strong writing. I was hooked, and then it got very, very bland, and then the last 7 chapters really took off again. So I don't know, you never know too. Like, is it really her writing? Like she just purely wrote this book and that's what came out, or the publishing company and what else?
I can see it being. I don't think there was a ton of I'm not sure what exactly happened with it, but I can see her wanting to write it a little more explicit than it was, or a little more adult, and the publishing company saying, tone it down, tone it down, tone it down, because there's a lot of things that just didn't translate well enough. Like the very last 20% of the book is like the strongest part of the book, and I feel like there might have been things throughout that the publishing company wanted toned down, because honestly, she kind of was saying it was new adult, da 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 da, but then it's also being published by Bloomsbury, which is a children's publisher. It's next to children's books at conventions.
It's jarring, isn't it? It doesn't.
So I can see the publishing company being like, "Hey, we can't do this," So I'm not sure what exactly. I mean, obviously that's just speculation. We're never gonna know. But
exactly.
The problems that I had with the story was a lot of the inconsistencies throughout, with all the characters, with the writing, with the pacing, with the action. Like, there's so many inconsistencies as far as, there's certain things that are great, and then there's stuff that's just like, what? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think, I don't know what the issue with that was, but I'm not sure if her writing two series that are very different has something to do with it, if she was kind of coasting a little bit because she already had a lot of Throne of Glass, enthusiasts, and everyone was going to pick this up, so it was, not as motivating to make this first book, amazing because, she already had a following. I don't know what all the things were, but it was so shaky, and that was the biggest disappointment, is because we've grown to really like her as an author and like her stories, and we have, Throne of Glass that we all have really started to enjoy, and then we had this and we're like, wow.
The only thing I could think is, maybe Sarah J. Maas has the first book problem, because if you think about Throne of Glass, the first book in Throne of Glass is kind of meh. And then you read Crown of Midnight and you're like, all right, this is a pretty good series, and you need to know in the third book, what happens. So maybe that's the thing. I really like the Throne of Glass series, but the first book only made it worthwhile for me to read the second and third because you guys were reading the second and third. So I was just like, oh, I'll read them, whatever, and I got them from the library, and then I fell in love. So maybe she has that conundrum of first book syndrome. You never know.
And a lot of people have that problem with first books. Yeah. First books always tend to be my least favorite. So, and we'll talk about how we're all still continuing with the series regardless of how we feel about this one. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially because of later development.
Yeah. So. Well, the question was saying if I didn't know if it was a retelling, what would I think? I think questions like that are really great. But at the same time, you can never, ever know. We'll never know what we would have thought had we got into it not knowing it was a retelling. We don't know. Right. And, would I have still had issues with, the pacing and the characters? Yeah, I would. But would I obviously have had the issue of, well, he's not, bad and angry enough? I probably wouldn't, because I probably would have just gone, well, he's not my ideal kind of character, but I wouldn't have gone, he should be this way.
That's true.
Exactly. But I think it almost doesn't matter what we would have thought had it not been a retelling, because the bottom line is that it is. So it's if we sort of went down that road, it would be well, what would we feel if this had happened and if this had happened, or if it was pitched differently? And the bottom line is it is a retelling, and the problem with doing retellings is that if you don't hit the mark, or not just if she doesn't, because obviously some people love it, but if as a reader you don't feel it hits that point, then the message is kind of lost. And I guess that's the risk with retellings, is that you're pitching your book to readers who already know or already have their own opinions about that story.
Yeah, and that's the risk of pitching it through the publishing company as a retelling too. You could very well just say, oh, it goes along the lines, or but you don't pitch it like that. So
right. Sana from Inkbone's Books has a question about the masks in the story. What did we think of the mask element with the curse and stuff? That's how I felt about it. I think it was weak. I think it was really weak, and I think it was as far as him being a beast character. Oh my gosh, he has a mask on.
There's one word that keeps popping up in my head, and it's the word convenient.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. I feel like the masks
weren't
ugly. It was just convenient. It was what gave it that beauty. And again, it's going back to the whole Beauty and the Beast thing. But of course, ultimately, it is a retelling, so we're going to keep doing that. And I just felt like the masks weren't ugly enough. And I don't mean that in that they should be really grotesque, but it's there's something very alluring about a masquerade ball and that sort of thing. those sorts of masks are actually very like beautiful and enchanting and alluring. So to then be like, that's what makes him ugly, it's like, really? Right. Not that she says it makes him ugly, but you know what I mean? For that to be like a beastly element in that everyone's been transformed, it's like, there are worse things.
Right. See, I'm sure it would suck to have a mask on all day, but like, I felt the same way.
See, I liked it a little bit in the sense that it was just a good play on how the characters in Beauty and the Beast get turned into the inanimate objects of the castle. But at the same time, I felt like that was, again, like Sarah Jane said, convenient. Like, there could have been 400 different ideas to put in there, and it was just that they got masks, like, glued onto their face, kind of. So I was like, nah. But maybe that, that also comes from the villain maybe being not so villain-esque as she thinks she is. Like, oh, way to go. You just made people have masks on their face.
She's like, oh my god, that was such a good idea. Like, what?
I picture it'd be funnier if people had, like, the ones like my glasses with the mustaches, like, okay, now you look funny. Now
that'd be a curse, like if someone had something really horrible on their face. But I just felt like it was convenient. I felt like it was a bit of. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it'd be awful. I'm not saying I want a mask on my face for like however many years. I mean, can you imagine like having a wash? But when it actually comes down to like how bad he looked or like beastly or whatever, it was like, right, so you've got some, and she always knew he was attractive. That was the thing that got me. It was never he's like ugly or he's terrifying
or he's vile
he's scary or whatever. It's, I wonder what his eyes look like. I wonder what he looks like under that mask in a really dreamy way. So if it's not putting her off, it's all about kind of this beauty within, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have that because he had a mask on, and she never thought, oh, he's like terrifying or whatever. It's just, I wonder what colour his are. I wonder how beautiful he is. It's like, that's what it's about.
Look at his jaw. I can see his jaw through the. Like,
he's got a really nice neck muscles and two abs. Like,
right. Oh gosh. Yeah. So we do have a few questions regarding like the future of the series and her writing retellings for every book in the series and how we think that's going to go. So there's a couple questions that I'm combining into kind of one, but will we continue with the series? How do we think it's going to be handled, especially considering that the rest of them are also going to be retellings?
Yeah.
I'm continuing because
I'm going to continue, but I'm not pre-ordering, and I might get it from the library.
Here's my conundrum. Here's my because I would do the same thing, but book 2 is a Hades and Persephone retelling. So like I have to have it.
I know you like that.
I know, and I'm just like, damn it! Like, I didn't want to buy it. But now
if this book wasn't hyped up enough, that book's going to be majorly hyped up for you.
I can't even think about it.
Yeah.
But I also kind of want it just so I can, like, read it and know, and then be like, oh, it's worth it, or, like, you disappointed me again.
I actually think you have to read it quite early. Like, when people say that, oh, don't read it when it first comes out to avoid the hype, I actually think you're better off just reading it as soon as it comes out, because actually by not reading it, you're listening to the hype. Even if you want to switch off, you just can't.
Right.
Yeah. So I think as well, it sometimes in a way when you read a book that you haven't loved, you almost want to read the next book sooner rather than later, because I don't want hype to be an issue this time.
Right.
So I almost have to buy into the hype to avoid the hype.
The problem is that with these books, they get arcs sent out months in advance. So you have all this hype. Like, I follow a ton of bloggers, and bloggers mainly got this book before. And so 6 months out, people were like, this is the most amazing book I've read all year. And I'm just like, oh, cool. And then I know a few people, like Sana, and my name is Marina's, like, read it and, like, hated it. And I was like, okay. And so I wasn't sure where I was going to sit with this when I did end up reading it. Like, yes, I knew about the hype, but I was also knew about the anti-hype.
Yeah.
But with these books, like, it's gotten to the point within publishing and marketing that we can't completely, with big releases like this, you can't go in blind anymore because everyone's talking about it. Unless you mute your Twitter and, like, don't go, because everyone's talking about it. Even if they're, like, not spoiling anything, like, they're saying, like, this is the most amazing thing, I love these characters, I love this, romance, da-da-da-da-da, and, like, you just can't avoid it at this point. So even reading it as it first comes out, like, the only way you could avoid it is if you are an early ARC reader as well, which, like, not everyone can do that.
Yeah, which sucks because then you can't
get it. Hype is just unavoidable. Hype is just, like, if you want to be a part of, like, this community, you're a part of the hype, regardless of what you think about it. And it's just one of those things. And I honestly think that I will never know, because we're never going to know what we would have thought had none of us known about. We're never going to know. But do I think the hype affected my opinion of it? I really don't. I think what affected my opinion of it is the fact that it was a fairy tale retelling, and I love fairy tales, and I love fairy tales that go a bit dark and a bit, you know. And also, in addition to that, I love Fae. So when you put those two things together, I hyped it up for myself.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it was anybody else. I mean, I was literally like, a Fae book, another Fae book, let me, you know, and like beauty. The two things put together, that's what hyped it for me. It wasn't anybody's review or anybody's opinion. It was like, if someone said to me, Sarah Jane, describe one of your perfect books, I would have created this scenario. So
Right.
the fact that it didn't deliver, I honestly don't think it was anything to do with hype. I think it was just me getting carried away.
Right. I mean, I did the same thing, like with Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite fairy tales of all time. I mean, I feel like a lot of us that grew up around the movie and everything, like, feel that way. So
Yeah.
we're all just like, this is the perfect, I mean, for our age group, it's like the ideal, like, everybody loves it. So I think, yeah, I felt the same way. Like, even if I wouldn't have been, the hype didn't help with, like, hearing everybody talk about it for months. But even so, I would have been like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, I have other Beauty and the Beast retellings on my shelf. Like, Cruel Beauty, I know people don't like, but I'm still like,
I really want to
I'll
read that.
probably like that. You know, because I'm like, it's Beauty and the Beast, I have to read it, you know? So it's one of those, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with the next book being Hades and Persephone. Like, I'm gonna, even though I know that this book has so many flaws and so many issues, I'm still gonna be, like, kind of excited for the next one, even though it's like, damn it, I don't want to be excited. Like, why? I just want to be done, but I can't be.
I couldn't walk away. I couldn't, as much as my feelings are my feelings about it, I don't think I could walk away and not read the next one. There are books that I've read where I literally have no interest in carrying on, and I do genuinely want to read the rest. And I think what you said, Kristen, about like Throne of Glass, I think that is probably the perfect comparison, because when I read Throne of Glass, was I like, oh my god, this is the best series ever? No, I wasn't.
Nope.
So maybe the next one, and again, I guess your feelings towards it, Sam, is probably going to be quite different to mine, because it's that fairy tale retelling of what that means to that person.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, because I'm not aware of that story very well.
See,
could
I
go
have no
into it
idea what
and-
it's about either.
No,
so I'll have
exactly.
no
So
idea.
we
I'll
would
be
be
like,
that would be like the best. We'd be like basing it on just the story itself. Whereas Sam, you'd be like, well, that's
I'm
like
screwed.
And I think it'd actually be quite interesting for all three of us to like do the same thing again and see
Of course
it from
we
like
will.
a different.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
See you next
Like,
year.
and see it from that point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll
I don't
see.
know. I'm a little scared to see how she's gonna base the rest of keep the story going and keep getting retellings going in without like adding too many new characters. Like, I don't know. Is she gonna add new characters? Because I kind of hope she develops the ones she's already got, because they're kind of underdeveloped yet.
Right.
So
And without
I
it
don't know,
feeling
I'm
forced
just
as well.
nervous. Yeah. Because like I don't want to bring up the Lunar Chronicles. I look over there, like it's there.
I was just thinking that.
But like the Lunar Chronicles brings in the main characters, and I don't know, like the way she writes them, it feels true to each story, bringing those elements in, but then it goes off on its own story, where this didn't do either things. It just kind of had her story and some elements, and just so.
Right. We will see. And
I don't
I'll be
know.
here to talk about it.
What will be will be.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of Feyre and character development and everything, because Sana again asked how we feel about Feyre going from hating Fae to falling in love with one to becoming one, like that arc.
I never really felt like she hated the Fae enough to begin with.
I thought it was predictable that she was going to be Fae. I
didn't like that.
when he said like your family forgot about you, like blah blah blah, and then later he was going to be like I thought he was going to come out and say something angry, be like, actually they never were your family, and like you're this person, like blah blah blah, like you're actually Fae or something. So that's what I thought was going to happen. So then when she became Fae, I was just like, kind of knew something was going to happen like this. So. But it's still convenient again. Like, oh, now you can see everything. Look, there's that stuff over there. It's like, geez, that was easy.
And now I'm not going to grow old and die.
Yeah.
let's just put that out there. It's like, now they can be together, because she's not going to be an old woman and he's going to be. And it is the problem with stories with immortal characters. It always is the problem. Like, Twilight. Vampire Diaries, True Blood, all these, like, and I've just referenced all vampire things, but the problem with these like immortal characters is that when they then find a human love interest, you have that question of, well, having them grow old and die isn't exactly romantic, but turning them sometimes isn't it would change the story. And I kind of felt like I didn't feel like their love for each other. I didn't feel like they had gone through enough struggle, and that sounds really awful when you consider everything that happened. They actually did go through quite a lot of struggle, and that makes me sound really awful. But what I mean is that they spent so long like just kind of dancing around each other and faffing about. It felt like the moment they decided to be together, they got their wish.
Right.
Does that make any kind of sense? Like I feel like, and so the fact that she then became this high fae, it's like was that again too convenient at that point in the story?
I'm personally really okay with it because I, one, don't want to see human Feyre ever again because she annoys me so much. And because I think that otherwise we would have had Twilight Syndrome, where we go all the way to the last book being like, I can't be with you because I'm going to grow old, and da-da-da-da-da, and all this back and forth, and it's done now. Like, we don't have to worry.
That's a good point, actually, because if it happens early on, it's not going to be a part of the story later, and maybe that's actually a good thing. So, actually, to be fair, I didn't think of that, and that's...
Yeah,
I
didn't.
That happened earlier. Halfway down. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to deal with that halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
I changed my mind.
But yeah, I also agree that I don't feel like I didn't believe her hating Faye as much as she said she did.
She did.
Because, like, I mean, they claimed that they needed that for the curse, blah, 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 but, like, I don't know. She started feeling for them way too easily, so...
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, because they're meant to hate each other, that's meant to be the big thing about the curse, isn't it? It's like, she will hate Faye, and that was a very crucial part. This person had to hate Faye, and for it to be such a crucial part of the curse and the story, I don't feel like her hating them was as strong as it should be if it actually related to the curse. Like, if she just kind of didn't like them anyway, and it was just a plot point and a character development, that's fine. But if that's the level it had to reach, it's almost like, was it that hard?
Right.
I agree.
I feel very mean right now. It's not even like I really hated it. There are certain parts that I like.
Yeah, I didn't. It's not that I hated it. I just didn't love it either. I was just kind of like, meh. I experienced it. I got it. You know?
Right.
But what else?
I'm trying to go through the list of questions and see where we are. I mean, let's just get it all out there. How do we feel about Feyre as a protagonist in general?
Oh, no.
Yeah. This is how I feel about
She's
Feyre.
inconsistent, flat, stubborn, doesn't give... Like, if you're going to make a protagonist that's eventually going to be a hero at some point, I guess I would, if I was writing the book, I'd want people to like my main character. But I felt like all the main characters were kind of in this book. She was very, very much flat, very cookie-cutter generic in the ways that she was structured, and I hate myself, but I'm, a 50 on the 10 scale, like, I'm so ugly, like, okay,
oh my
sure.
God.
Yeah.
That was my least favorite scene when, well, not my least favorite, but it was up there.
So I didn't like her.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves is when characters that are gorgeous decide to sit in the mirror and pretend that they're not. Because there was things where she was like, oh, I hate my slightly upturned eyes and my nose that scrunches when I laugh and my beautiful skin and my cheekbones and my sunken-in cheeks because I haven't eaten in so long. And I'm just like, that's my face the whole time she's doing that. Why? You're the ideal. Like, why are you... I hate that.
And it's like, I would have disliked her had she been... It's not like, had she acknowledged that she wasn't ugly, we would have then not liked her. Do you know what I mean? Like, had she sort of said something like, like she's got this, obviously, this issue with her family and that they used to be wealthy. I feel like what would have been a more interesting take on it would have been if she looked at herself and thought, I'm not half bad looking, but imagine how much better I would be had we still got this money, because then she would look at herself and be like, this is who I am visually, like my face is my face, but if we had this money, my hair wouldn't be all tangled, and it would be, and if she kind of had those flaws and those like insecurities, I would have gelled with that a lot better, because I could have understood it, because she's come from someone who, like a family who was wealthy, and then she wasn't. And when you think of simple things like clothes and hair, whether it's in a fantasy world or not, that's a massive difference depending on how like wealthy you are. Yeah. So I felt like that would have been a more interesting take on it, rather than the typical like, is that, oh, my cheeks are too sunken in, and Yeah, but as far as a protagonist goes, like, do you know what? I actually don't really have any opinion on her. Like,
I hate her.
I don't really have anything to say. Like, I just
she's
feel
just
very.
bland. Like, if they put somebody else in there, I wouldn't miss her.
You know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna say my favorite word.
Oh
Feyre
no.
was vanilla. She was vanilla, and I'm sorry, guys,
She
but
was.
she was, and she
But
was
she
the
is.
definition of vanilla, and I just
My
laugh.
my biggest problem with her was the fact that she had a death wish, and the fact that she was like so stupid. Like
Yeah.
I love characters that are like stubborn or crabby or like does stuff that are make dumb. I mean, Alina from the Grisha
Loved
trilogy
this
like makes dumb decisions, but like thinks she's making it like
She's
Feyre
convinced
makes
it's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
Feyre makes decisions that she like knows are stupid, and that everyone in the world tells her are stupid, and she's like, I'm gonna do it anyway. Like, why? And especially in a world, that's why I kind of am okay with her turning Fae, because now in the future, if she's doing dangerous shit, it's fine because she's Fae and she's basically immortal. But like with this, it's like everything, blades of grass could kill you. Like, why are you doing this? So, and there's like 7 or 8 different things that she did that are like, why? Like every time I turn the page, I'm like, why are you doing that? Why? I didn't care. Like I wasn't like, oh my god, she's gonna die. I was like, why are you doing that? Like I'm not even feeling like you're in danger because the first book you're not gonna die. So it's like, why? So
It
that was
was
my biggest problem
frustrating.
with her.
She was
Yeah.
very frustrating, and like when she did things that we saw as being very stupid, you couldn't even make the connection of, oh, well, she thinks this, or like,
Right.
you know, when she's told to like stay
Yeah.
inside, you know, she's told to stay inside, and if something happened that she had to leave, then you would understand, you know, like, I don't know, she hears a noise and she thinks that somebody's in danger, so she goes to save them, even though, but no, she's hungry. She's
Right.
hungry.
She wants to get a
She
piece
wants
of
a cookie. Yeah,
Right.
she gets a cookie. Like, she literally goes out there in danger for a damn cookie.
Right.
And it's just, I think that's what I messaged you actually, Sam, because I didn't send it in the group thing because I knew that you hadn't reached that point yet, Kristen. And I
Yeah.
remember now, I messaged Sam and I was like, she went outside for a damn cookie. And
Yeah.
it was just, that just sums it up. It's like, that wasn't a good enough reason. I mean, they better be some pretty good cookies to like worth risking
That's what I'm
your
saying.
life
Like,
for.
I want to see what kind of cookie this was.
Right.
Yeah, these better have been like double chocolate chip with dipped in chocolate and like made of gold or something, because
It probably
that's a
was.
big risk. Yeah.
Right.
And it's probably like the immortal cookie.
Yeah, or like
Right.
clean your soul of all wrongdoings for the
Right.
next.
Magical
yeah.
cookie.
Cookies better be
But-
magical. I expect to see that in book 2, a magical cookie.
The thing about like her putting herself in danger too, as far as like that stuff, like the Fire Knight stuff, is like it's not. My problem isn't like, oh, you deserved what you got because you did that or anything like that. Like there's no victim blaming as far as that, but it's like if someone tells you like multiple times in a dangerous area where there's like dangerous things around, not even just Tamlin, because there was obviously like Tamlin was being dangerous and like drunk that night, like, oh, I'm drunk and I can assault people, but like then there was like all those
That's actually
fairies that
really true.
almost raped her and like all like she knows, and it's like, why are you doing this? And I think that there was like that little thing where it's like, oh, the music was calling to her, and but at the same time it's like, no. Like if you have any kind of survival instinct at all, which you're supposed to because you're a hunter, then you wouldn't do this stuff. And she just does it over and over and over again.
Yep.
And like, you know what you said like about the music calling her and stuff? If we'd have had, I don't know, like it's hard to remember like each chapter, but if we'd have had like something about her really trying to fight it, you know, like she tried to like block the doors and then she put stuff like always like to lock the doors because she knows she's going to try and open it. If she actually fought against herself a bit more, I could have actually bought into the whole like the music was calling to her thing, because everything about these fair like really like seductive and stuff. But it was actually like, the music is calling to me, so I will.
Right. I'm going to walk out. Like, what?
Yeah, there was no struggle. There was no internal struggle there, and I just, I think all in all, I just kind of felt very indifferent towards her. I did find her frustrating, probably mostly for the reason that you've said with the whole like putting herself in danger. But I think aside from that, everything, I just felt quite indifferent towards her, to be honest. So,
How did we feel about Tamlin manipulating her kind of in order to break the curse? Like, as far as basically one of the big problems too with Feyre and just the story in general is that she's guided through everything. Like, she doesn't really have a choice in anything, and she's just like, she's morphed by everyone around her to like do certain things and be like, you know, he sent out all of his sentries to hopefully get shot by a girl that hated Faye.
Yeah.
And all this, like, so it just doesn't. make sense to me. Like, how she's okay with all of this. You know, like, how do we feel about Tamlin basically manipulating her? Almost everybody manipulating her, really.
I just thought it just showed you how weak she really is.
Yeah.
You build up this character as a very good huntress. She's the smartest of her sisters. She's able to do all this stuff, and then she's getting manipulated by every single person in her life. And a lot of the time, knowingly being manipulated. Like, she'll just knowingly be manipulated. I'm like, really? Like, you can't resist any manipulation at all?
Yeah, as the story went on, she did. I think that's one of the things, too, about, again, being a fairy tale retelling, is, like, in the Beauty and the Beast, like, again, the Disney film, because, again, I'm not familiar with, like, the old traditional actual Beauty and the Beast story, but you have it where, like, ultimately Belle has a choice what she's doing. Like, the Beast never really manipulates her a certain way. You can say that, like, maybe giving her, like, the gift of the library, but I honestly feel like that was, you know, like, out of the kindness of his heart kind of thing. Basically, you feel like Belle has agency and has a choice in the things she's doing. But really, she wasn't really like Feyre wasn't given a choice with a lot of the things she does because she's just manipulated to feel a certain way and only given certain information. And, you know, like, he hides these staff from her for the longest time until they kiss, and then he's like, oh, I can show these to you now. And like all this kind of like, ugh, like, why? You're not honest. And that's one of the biggest problems with Tamlin is, like, he's pegged as a good guy, and he's vanilla, but I wouldn't necessarily even consider Tamlin a good guy, but he's not a bad guy in a good way. You know, like, he's not an interesting bad boy, but he's just like a shady kind of like, like, I don't really try, like,
shady is the perfect word to describe him.
Yeah, and but he's touted as like, oh, he's a good person, just like the Fire Night scene when he bites her and is like, I'm punishing you for what, you know, blah blah blah. I just had sex with somebody else, and I wanted to have sex with you.
But I could smell you.
Yeah, and all this like shitty, abusive, possessive crap, and then she snacks him, and the next day him and Lucian are like laughing and is like, you shouldn't have gone outside then, and then like everything's forgotten. It's like, wait, you were supposed to be nice. Like, that is not nice. So
I didn't have like a massive like I think my thoughts on it are quite like a lot, so I'm just gonna sort of go into it a little bit. But I didn't really have a huge issue with their like scene. But what I did have an issue with was his reaction the next day. That's when it annoyed me, because in my mind I probably didn't have a problem with it because I thought I knew where it was going. So like I was reading it and I wasn't like, oh, this is this or this is that, because I was like, you know, tomorrow he's going to be like, I'm so sorry, and all this stuff. And then he's at the table laughing, and I'm like, you douche, you actual douche. So sometimes, like, it's not just the way something is executed, it's what's dealt with next. And I just thought, you know, not that it's, I'm not of course saying it's okay because she went out there, that's not what I'm saying at all, but we knew what to expect from this behaviour. So when it happened, it didn't shock me, I think is what I'm, you know, and I thought, oh, okay, here we go, he's going to do something really bad, and then tomorrow he's going to, like, feel really guilty for it. So because I could almost, like, preempt this guilt, not that I'm, of course, saying that guilt makes it okay, but you know where I'm going with it. And then the next day when he's just casually at that table, like, laughing away, I just wanted to, like, punch his mask.
Also, I think it comes with the inconsistency of the characters again. Like, they're just all over the place. Like, which makes it, I mean, yes, makes it unpredictable, but it also makes it inconsistent, which makes you feel like you're just reading random things all the time. Like, what's the point of the story?
The only two characters that I felt like were consistent were Lucian and Rhys.
Yeah. I don't know how to say his name.
Rhys or Lucian?
Rhys.
I only know from another book that has the same name that I read. The Anita Blake books have a Rhys, I think. No, the Mary Gentry books. The same thing. Another Fae book. It's a Fae name, apparently. Yeah. So yeah, but those are the two characters that were my favorite characters, and that remained consistent throughout the story when they're in there.
And I don't want to be predictable. I don't want it to be like, oh, what a surprise, Sarah Jane, like the Rhys character, the one who was basically, you know, the actual douche. But it's not. It's not about that. It was that he had so many layers, and that you never knew what was happening with him. And I don't know if this was just me, but I actually felt like her writing was stronger when she was writing him. And I kept coming away from the book and being like, is this just because I like him? But then I was looking at the like individual sentences, and it was like his descriptions. There were so many like clever words used to describe his behaviour and all this stuff, and I just felt like he was really interesting. He was kind of he was more beastly. I'm just putting it out there, like, you know,
Yeah.
he was more like if
Well, yeah, I almost thought he was like Gaston-ish because he was
yeah.
very like forward with everything he was saying, but still like mysterious. And I was kind of like,
Right.
I was like, is this like is this supposed to be Gaston? Like, I
I
even
feel
did
like
an
he kind of
update.
was supposed
Yeah,
to
I
be.
did one of my like Goodreads updates, and I was like, oh, I think I know who this character is supposed to be because it felt like I was like, oh, this is Gaston, but like I was like, maybe it'll be cool where Gaston's actually like turned out to be the better person than the Beast or something, you know? But then
Right.
That's funny.
later,
I never thought of it like that because like I have read like all the originals and like I've studied them for like the stuff that I'm writing myself because that's all about fairy tale retellings. So
Mhm.
so again, maybe that's got something to do with it because I probably had more of an idea of what I expected it to be. So I never really pegged it as like, is this person this character or whatever, because there's so many different versions. But I just did feel like that Reese character was just, and Lucian as well. Like he was funny, but you could sense him being like this really stubborn guy, and you could feel like his exterior like coming down, and then he was
Yep.
doing things that were quite nice. And he was really nice. And then like with the Reese character, yeah, he was awful, but we loved him anyway, and he was very interesting.
Yeah.
He was
Dean's
interesting. That's a
favorite.
like it, yeah. And I don't want to be predictable, but I loved him.
I mean, we were going to like it's just a
Yeah.
matter of. I mean,
Yeah,
we shouldn't fight it, you know. But as
but I
far
want more of him.
we do have a question about like that body paint that he used on her, that Reeves used on her. How do we feel about it? And you know that I feel like a lot of reviews have said that it is that he kind of like date rape drugged her a little bit with the fairy wine. And for me, the body paint, not that it excuses. I mean, it's douchey to drug her. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm not saying but because that negates my statement. And the paint like makes it so that she knew that he wasn't touching her inappropriately. And some people might say like, oh well, he was touching her and she didn't want him to anyway. Da 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 da. But in that situation, he had to do something. He was using her to get to the queen and to Tamlin so that Tamlin could do what he, you know, Reese was manipulating the situation in his own way because
Yeah.
he's a manipulative, douchey character, and that's what he's there for. So I was okay with the paint, and I liked that element because we knew that he wasn't doing anything inappropriate with her with that paint. Like that was
That's what I
our
thought.
safeguard.
I thought it was kind of neat because then like he would know where she's been touched like throughout the entire night or whatever. But it
Which is
also
possessive and creepy.
yeah,
Right.
but it would also let her know in the
Yeah.
morning. Like then she like able to like tell or whatever, or at least
Right.
know. So like that's kind of a comforting thing, like because she obviously was like blacked out, couldn't remember anything, so she just woke up and was like, whoa. So in a way, it was kind of like a safeguard factor for everybody, even the reader, to understand what was going on. And I thought it was a neat element to bring in. I really thought that was unique.
Right, because I think
I liked it.
otherwise we would have had it where people, like, if he would have just wine drugged her and we wouldn't have had the paint, some people might have been like, oh, what did he do? You know? So
Like,
with
yeah,
his, we were like, he
He
didn't do
never
anything.
crossed the line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the only
he
time
never
that,
crossed the line.
yeah, the
Sorry,
only time
Karen.
he did kiss her was when her and Tamlin made out in the broom closet right in front of, like, the queen, basically, and he was like, I have to do this to, like, cover this up, you know? So, and that, in that situation, like, obviously forcing yourself on somebody is never okay, but in this situation, there's all these different things that make these things not okay, but you're in a dangerous, life-altering, life-threatening situation. If he didn't kiss her, they would have all probably died because the queen would have killed him. So,
And also, it's like, I know, like, we've obviously had this conversation so many times before, and I know that, like, we all feel the same way, is that with these stories, I'm not saying that all of our, like, morals should go out the window, but you just can't put human, like, morals on them. And at the end of the day, like, what he did was bad, but it was also, like, a smokescreen to the queen. And if he didn't do these douchey things, then she wouldn't believe him. So what he did was put something in place so that it would help him keep tabs on her, because without it he wouldn't know what was going on, and he needed to in order to have his plan. And it also meant that she knew the next day. So I thought it was very clever. I also had I remember seeing in the Goodreads group the connection between that and The Mummy, and I did think that exactly, like, when I read it, because it's like one of my most favourite films, and I was like, this is like the Mummy film.
right.
So but yeah, I loved it. I thought it was actually very clever, and it was one of the things that I did like a lot about the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did too. And as far as the, we have a question too about like the challenges and stuff. So what did you think of Feyre and the challenges that the evil queen made her go through towards the end of the book to free Tamlin?
Lame. It was.
Here's the thing. I like that part of the book and all the challenges and stuff, and I like that we got to see them because one of the complaints with Throne of Glass is that you didn't get to see a lot of the challenges that Selena went through.
Yeah,
But
true.
I hated the riddle.
Yeah, that thing.
That thing.
bad.
Chris is not even calling it a riddle, it's a thing.
Right. I think we all knew that it was love as soon as we read it, right? Like,
Yeah, I was like, oh,
everyone
the answer's
knew.
gonna be love,
Do you know
isn't it?
what? I actually didn't think it was because I thought it was too, like, I genuinely read, I looked at it and I thought, oh, it's love, and then I thought, no, because that would be ridiculous.
That's
Like, I
right.
actually didn't think it would be because I thought it would be way too easy.
That's kind of
And
how
then
I
the closer,
felt.
yeah, and then when it actually was, I was like,
Right. It makes your villain ridiculous when you do that. Like, why would she give them an out like that with an easy riddle? And granted, it's not. I guess it's not supposed to be easy to them or whatever. But like, really, it's just like with the
we should
twirling
find it
mustache.
easy.
Like, oh, like the stupid villains that you have from like old movies that always tell their like evil plan to the hero before they kill him, and then
Yeah,
it's,
like in Austin Powers too.
yeah, it's like
He's
that.
like, I'm gonna drape you over these radioactive sharks with lasers on their heads.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Oh, I hated it. And then like I was kind of okay with the worm. I know that Kristen didn't like the worm.
I didn't like the worm. I've got these weird things about certain creatures in books, and I've talked about it on Twitter recently. There are some creatures that I just don't buy into, and a giant worm is one of them because it's like what? I know it's a worm, but it's like, oh look, here comes this creepy slug, it's going to kill me. Or,
have you guys seen
like,
Tremors? The 80s, 70s movie? Yeah.
Like I picture it having like rows and rows of teeth, and like you open it like, but like the way it's described, it just says like a giant worm, and I'm just
it was like Tremors.
and it's blind.
Yeah, it was Tremors. It was from the movie Tremors, basically. She just took that because it's the same kind of thing where like it can sense vibrations. It's blind. It has a ton of teeth. It's a classic film. How have you guys not seen this? No, so I was okay with that because for once we did get to see her like hunter instinct for like once. But the second challenge was kind of like but then again it was cool because we got to see the whole tattoo thing and that like Reese was still helping her.
What was the second challenge? I can't even remember.
When Lucian was on like the spike thing and she had to pull the levers to save them. She couldn't read.
And he was like,
and then,
I liked that.
And he told her through the tattoo. That was cool because that made the tattoo like this like bond thing. And I think that's gonna have the tattoo is gonna have some Hades and Persephone stuff, which I'm like, yes.
And I did like that they did where she has to spend a week with him. I liked that too. I thought that was kind of cool because I'm like,
and I like the way they bargained with it as well. She didn't just like roll over and take it. She was like, no, like and cut it down and stuff. I guess like that last third of the book, that's what I really enjoyed, and I did like all the challenges. Now I can remember them. The only one that I had a bit of an issue with was the worm. What I liked the most was that we did see her hunting instinct. We did see that part of her. We saw how she had grown from this girl who'd killed a wolf in the beginning to someone who was like a better hunter and stuff like that. I really like that. I just wish it wasn't an insect. Like I just wish it was something a little bit more than a worm.
It's kind of like a snake, like a big.
Yeah,
snake
I know. I used to play
snake.
a game on Nintendo, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, and there was one like this big worm thing that came, and you had to like kill it, and that's what I picture. But at the same time, when I kept reading it, it just said giant worm, and I kept thinking, Sarah J. Maas like really writes these fighting scenes, but there's like they seem really lame. Like if you think Throne of Glass is like her fighting something that nobody else can see but her. Can you imagine watching that? Or this one, it's like watching a girl fight a worm. It's like these scenes don't seem that cool if I was actually there. I don't know about it.
It's like give us a real monster. Give us something that's got a bit more like.
I guess they're coming later.
Oh, they're coming, I'm sure.
They better be. If the next one's like a giant snail, then I'm out.
A giant snail. Oh my god. How do we feel about the very last challenge with like having to kill people and then him having like a stone heart? Like where did that come from?
I don't know. That was weird.
Like easy, convenient again.
Yeah, I thought it was neat that she had to go through and kind of kill in a way because she was a hunter and like, I mean, it gave emotion to Feyre finally. Like she actually had to go through a struggle that seemed legit. You know,
emotional struggle.
Her to have to murder people, but I felt like the people that she had to murder, some of them, I remember one willingly wanted to die, like he was just ready.
He was okay.
Yeah, like there was one who was like okay, and I thought at the same time, like, oh, she's finally getting a struggle, yet the people you picked, like, are already bound up and chained and just laying there ready for death anyways, so.
Mm-hmm.
Eh.
And I think it
But,
would have been interesting if it was like she had to like hunt her family or like something like that.
yeah,
You
something a little bit, I don't know, it just wasn't, it was tough and I liked the change, but it wasn't tough enough. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it
liked
was like,
that. I like that they didn't want to die. Like I think in a lot of things, the end thing is either like cancelled out and they don't have to do it, but they think they will. And you know, at the end of the day, she did kill somebody who was innocent, and I thought that was a very interesting twist to it because I didn't expect her to do that. Did I wish that maybe they had almost like maybe had to fight and then she did deliver like the final blow? Maybe I would have preferred that, but
right.
I did like it. I did think it was quite interesting to see her retake on somebody who was completely innocent because at the end of the day, that's what I found quite interesting was that that's what she did with that wolf, that she killed it when she thought it was innocent. And so then actually it finished was almost a very similar act, and it was almost like it wasn't like that she didn't have any character growth, but it was what does this mean now after everything that she'd learned?
Yeah.
And I found that quite interesting.
Yeah. It was a nice like kind of full circle type thing.
Yeah, I thought so as well. And like for me, the whole book written, the ending was the best besides the little parts of the challenges. The ending of the book really picked up its own pace and became its own, like, I don't know, writing style and everything. So I feel like if it's ending on that note, the second book's going to continue hopefully at that pace and that storytelling. And that's what I'm hoping. And I'm hoping that maybe this first one, the one gripe I had with the entire book was that it didn't develop the world enough.
Right.
To me, like you have this whole map. They talk about the summer court, the spring court, and yet there wasn't. I don't know. Just felt.
I'm okay with that because I just guess that that's going to be like later on. Like she's finding out about the spring court in this book, and maybe I just
so that's what I'm
assumed that. Yeah, so that didn't really. And I guess you had to understand it. Like there had to be all these different courts to understand. And what I liked was that the courts were very unique because with a lot of Fae things, there's never like any unique courts. People just like count on the ones that we hear about.
Yeah.
So I found it really interesting that there were actual courts and different levels and stuff. It did make me want to find out more about it, but I didn't mind that we didn't get it because I just assume we're going to move courts every book or like.
Yeah.
Or travel around. I can see us traveling around.
They were in travel.
Yeah.
As far as so, let's actually talk about that. What do we think's gonna? What do we want to see, and what do we think's gonna happen in the future books? You know, book 2. I guess we're gonna focus on the most. We're not gonna know, but like overall, what do we think? What do we want to see more of, and what do we think's gonna happen with the rest of the series?
Yeah, Reese.
No, in all seriousness, partly Reese. I think I want to see some characters that I can really get invested in because I haven't really, but I want to see, I do want to see new characters, but I do want to see this whole like thing with Reese play out, like this whole like for a week and all this stuff. I want to see what that, because that's almost like another Beauty and the Beast thing, in that she is forced to go with him for some time, and so I'd like to see that, but I would genuinely like to see like what this Reese guy is up to. And I think, I would just like to see the other courts. I'd like to see what's going on with them.
Yeah, I'm excited about the other courts, because I think we're going to see more of them too. Like, I like how Summer looks and stuff like that. Like, that's going to be cool. But a lot of them we didn't even really get to see a ton of. So, at least maybe we'll have to have her traveling through them to get up to night, Yeah. And then I obviously want to see the Reese, Hades, Persephone, everything there. Like, I'm really excited to see the Night Court, because those are always really interesting. And it's going to be all, like, kind of bad and dark and that.
I feel like Winter could be interesting as well.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of them could just be, it could all be cool. I want to see more Lucian, because I love him. I love his backstory. I love the
him
dynamic
too.
there. I think that'll be cool. And again, like you said, more characters. And I'm very interested to see, especially with Reese, what happens with that whole how he stumbled before he left and, looked at her all like, ooh, because people are hypothesizing that that's the mating bond, and I'm like, please, Lord. So, I'm hoping that's what that is, because I need it.
Bond.
Yeah. Yes. So,
It would be very interesting, and it would take us down a different route that we weren't expecting. And then, because sometimes with books, like you read the first one and you think, well, I don't get that. Because if you think of like, there's loads of other books. I'm not going to say any names because obviously we don't want to spoil people for other books. But I can think of so many books off the top of my head where you think they're going to be with somebody and then it goes the other way.
Right.
And if you've got all the books to marathon, it's fine because then you go, I knew that wasn't going to work out. But obviously, because this is like as
We're
it's
waiting.
happening, we're waiting. Have we just maybe not bought into something that we were expected to buy into, and there's a reason we didn't buy into it? Like, I don't know. Does that?
Yeah, that does make sense. Like that she underdeveloped Tamlin because ideally later on Tamlin is insignificant, really. Like maybe he's only in this book and that he is insignificant, but that this book he's here for this reason to be the Beast, but as we move forward, he slowly becomes a side character and somebody else rises up, and that would be really unique. I'd actually really like that because
when you have
like
the
Tamlin.
Beast and Hades, like it's so much better.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see because in my mind I just think obviously there's probably if there's anybody watching this by the way and they absolutely like ship these two characters together, we've probably just like the ship just crashed.
Ship it.
But in my mind I feel like they didn't click and I just a little bit of me is thinking
It was all
there
physical.
going to be yes, is there gonna be something with a deeper level with somebody else potentially this Reese character because of this whole like if that happens, I'll probably end up coming back watching this and being like, we thought that, or it won't happen and we'll come back and go, wow, we were well off base, guys.
I can't handle that happening to me again.
We were so young back in that live show. We had no idea.
I can't handle that.
We weren't prepared.
I can't do that again. All right, well, I think we covered most of everything, so kind of still looking forward slightly to book 2. I don't know how to feel. But yeah, I'll be reading it. We'll all be reading it. We'll be here in a year discussing book 2, which will be here. Whatever.
Yeah. I think I want to read it like sooner rather than later.
Well, whatever you
like right
guys
after
do
release.
is what I'll do probably. So
Yeah. So
I think it will be interesting to see all of our different opinions, especially because the retelling is something you really like, Sam. It's going to be very interesting because we could be like, oh, we love this aspect, and you're like, yeah, but that didn't work because it's, or you could love it and do you know what I mean? It's very interesting to have like someone who loves that retelling.
I have
and then
no
someone
idea.
who doesn't.
it
Yeah,
gives
it'd be
me
like if there was a Little Mermaid retelling, I'd be like,
yeah, I'm ready.
Right.
I'm ready. I am present.
Really quick, do we want to discuss, I know we haven't fully solidified this, but I just want to let people know that are watching. For the next random read-along, we're not going to be doing anything this month for August, but we have all discussed in the future doing a Raven Boys series read-along. So if any of you guys are interested in that, we are going to be doing that in the future, like in the fall. For the 3 books that are released. We haven't discussed exactly how we're going to do it yet, but we are going to do that in the fall so that we're ready for the Raven King, which comes out at the beginning of next year. And because Raven Boys is very... What was that?
And we've got another one as well, because we were going to do Daughter of Smoke and Bone, weren't we, as well?
Yes, probably after Raven Boys. So those are 2 upcoming ones, if you guys are interested in those. That we'll be announcing them. Yeah. We'll be announcing those, but just letting you guys know. So thank you guys for watching and joining and us all discussing and not gushing about the book.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see people's comments, like, if they agreed or if they didn't agree. Like, definitely be...
Yeah, I'm willing to hear anything, so...
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'll be replying to them all.
Yes.
Yep, I'll be stalking this video now.
Right.
Yeah, I will. I'll be like, that's what I did last night. I was like, this isn't even on my channel, but I was like responding to everyone.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I just had so much that I wanted to say, and sometimes people say something that you didn't even think of, and you're like, ooh, I never thought about it from that point of view. So, yeah, I definitely am interested to see like other people's thoughts, because I kind of forgot about it a little bit, because obviously it's been a couple of weeks, but now I'm thinking about it again. So I'm intrigued to see what other people think.
Yeah, definitely leave us some comments.
People, I'm tired.
All right, well, thank you guys all for watching.
Yes. And thank you very much to my friend for letting me use her Wi-Fi.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Carly.
Yes, thank you.